I wanted to say
Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, June 23rd, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our Tuesday Zoom chat with the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. And we have a lineup of great guests each week. And especially today, we're excited about our topic of fathers and their role in the family when it's a special needs family. So we're glad to have our guests today. We'll introduce them in just a minute. My name is Sonia Bingaman, and I am the Regional Manager of the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, the Sacramento Regional Office. We have offices around the state, 12 offices, and the Sacramento office covers 10 counties around Sacramento, which correlates with Alta Regional Center's catchment area. So that's Sacramento, Yolo, Yuba, Sutter, Colusa, Placer, Nevada, Alpine, Sierra, and El Dorado counties. But we do advertise this Zoom chat all around the state, so there may be some of you from other parts in the state, and you're all welcome. A lot of the topics we cover are very general and applied to anyone, anywhere in the state. So even though we were talking about a specific local group, you may have a similar group in your area. So we're glad that we can advertise these Zoom chats all around the state and have new faces and friends joining us. Kathy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Bryan, and I work alongside Sonia Bingaman. Just happy to be here. I'm the community program specialist in the office. Sonia and I are a two-woman office, and we try to cover all those counties and do a lot of advocacy. So thank you, dads, for being here. And I'm really looking forward to it because I haven't been to the Dad-vocates group. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys do.
Thank you, Kathy. And Kathy will be monitoring the chat. So if you have a question that you want to ask, feel free to put it in the chat or a comment. She'll be monitoring that as well as letting people in who try to join the group. We've implemented a lot of security features, and one of those is having people in the waiting room so that we only let people in that we know and who have registered and answered all of our pesky questions. So a lot of those features are just to make sure that we don't get Zoom bombed and have not nice things happen. So the State Council on Developmental Disabilities is established by state and federal law as an independent state agency to ensure that people with developmental disabilities and their families receive the services and supports they need. Through advocacy, capacity building, and systemic change, SCDD works to achieve a consumer and family-friendly and individualized supports and services to assist them in the community. During COVID-19, we've been reaching into the community, finding out what the needs are, what the challenges are, what the issues are, and trying to address those. And some of our chats have addressed some of those topics, giving people answers to questions they have, trying to figure out what's happening now that we're all living in this virtual world, connecting people with their school districts, with their programs, with the regional center, and so on. So today we're going to focus on a topic that's a little bit different. It's not an agency focus or an organization focus. It's really people focused and a really special group of fathers. And we were just chatting before the call started about a lot of us go way back to the 90s that we ran into each other at conferences and trainings that happened in Sacramento. And it's just great that we have old faces and old friendships that we can build on for relationships. And relationships is really what's so vital in our community. I think most people learn the best about resources by talking to someone they meet at a group or a training and become friends, and they become the best source of information. So the power of a group like the group that Raymond's going to talk about in a minute is really incredible. Obviously, there's lots of parent groups, and finding one where you're comfortable is just the best thing that can happen to help families during difficult times and unusual situations and looking for support. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Raymond, to introduce yourself. Thanks for joining us and being part of this. Let us know who you are and a little more about the Dad-vocates group.
Sure. Thanks, Tony. Greatly appreciated. As a dad trying to figure out how to raise a child with a disability has never been an easy task. And my son is now 30. And by happenstance, my wife drugged me to a parent training on raising a child with a disability. And by happenstance, I happened to meet Al Milan, who at the time was, I think, still working at Warmline and was running a dad's group. So this was well over 25 years ago, I'm sure. And just to give you a little background on that, Al told us about this dad's group, and my wife kept telling me, Raymond, are you gonna go? I said, yeah, I'll go. And, you know, I didn't go. And the next month my wife would ask me, Raymond, you gonna go? And yeah, I'll go, but never did. And she kept asking every month. And so I said, okay, you know, to myself, you know, if I just go, will you stop bugging me? And little would I know, I've never stopped going, never stopped learning. So the Dad-vocates has been vitally important to me to keep my sanity, because I'm able to talk to like-minded dads and chat about issues that maybe are difficult to talk about. So talking with other dads has been beneficial. So before COVID, we would meet on the last Tuesday of the month at Round Table Pizza on the corner of Hazel and Madison at 7:30 at night. And for the most part, we would shut down the pizza place. Some dads would have to leave earlier and stuff, but some of us would stay to the bitter end, chatting and having conversations. David is one of our newest members, and I invited him because he has a young child, and to get his perspective of the young child. Al and myself, we have older kids, so we've been doing this for a number of years as a group. And Al started it, and back then it was known as Trailblazers. Then I took it over a few years ago and kind of retooled our center. And once kind of a break happened, I named it. So, and I know David has to leave early, but I would love David to have a conversation with folks, kind of why he started with the dad's group, what he's been getting out of the dad's group, and, you know, what he's been doing, you know, helping to keep the family safe during COVID-19 and stuff. So David, if you'd like to jump in and, you know, kind of give him your story.
Raymond, I was bumped for a minute, or I lost connection, so I missed part of my intro there. Hopefully you all can hear me now. I thought I was completely out. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so much like Raymond's story, mine is linked to my spouse. She was the one that initially encouraged me to get involved in some sort of dad's group. She had been involved with our, and let me give it a little bit of background. I have two sons, one neurotypical, almost 5-year-old, and a 21-month-old that has trisomy 21. And so my wife had found a lot of support when our first son was born, with like the Sutter New Moms group, which is just a support group for new moms for their first year of life, and had connected through that group with one of the moderators who recently acquired a business, the Sacramento Root is what they call it now, which is also a support group for moms largely. But she felt like she needed to get something going for dads, and basically recruited her husband to start doing a support group for dads once a month. And I started going to that a little bit before I found the Dad-vocate group. And while it was helpful for me, I didn't feel as connected as I do to the Dad-vocate group. Maybe because I didn't feel like the other fathers fully understood some of the challenges I was going through. And so it was my wife stumbling across the Dad-vocate group that said, hey, maybe you ought to go check this out. And it was late this past winter that I finally connected, and just really found value in at least being able to see that folks like Raymond and others have survived the challenges that they've had in raising a child with developmental disabilities, and that there are tools out there and strategies to help give them all that I would like to provide for both of my boys. So let me give you a little bit more background on my son's, my youngest son at least. He was a birth diagnosis with, well, actually a little bit after birth diagnosis with trisomy 21. We spent the first 24 hours kind of basking in, oh, no problems with, no challenges with birth and things like this, like we did with my first son, who actually was swept away to the NICU and doesn't have any developmental challenges. They were worried about his breathing and all. And so he spent 5 days in the NICU. Well, the youngest son, he arrived and we didn't know that he had trisomy 21. We didn't know that he had heart defects. We discovered that on the second day after his birth. So we went from kind of like, oh, that was so much better than the first time around with our neurotypical son and all the challenges that were created there, to discovering that he had massive ASD and VSD, that he was going to need to have open heart surgery before he was 6 months old, and all the other potential challenges that we were going to have. So I guess relative to the Dad-vocacy group, I really feel like it's a place where I can safely go and talk to my peers, I guess, fathers who have experienced, if not the same thing, similar challenges, and how they've navigated them. And it just, after the first visit, I don't know, it felt almost like home. So I want to thank you, Raymond. I want to thank you, Al, for your initial, steps in setting this up, and Raymond for just making me feel so welcome in a group of, the first visit I had, mostly dads with kids that are at least teenagers. But it just feels like a resource that I didn't have, that the dad support group that I was going to, while great for new dads that are, first time dads and dealing with the radical life changes that come just with the birth of a typical baby. I mean, there are a lot of challenges there. It's a rude awakening, even with a healthy baby, right? But to be able to have a place like Dad-vocates where I could go and talk about the other challenges that are so foreign to other dads that haven't had to do open heart surgery, have open heart surgery on their 3-month-old baby, or haven't been presented, shortly after birth with not necessarily the congratulatory type news from the healthcare providers, more the lines, oh, I'm sorry, I think your child has Down syndrome, or some other developmental challenge. So
can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Dave. Yeah, thank you for speaking rather eloquently about how you experience the dads group in your life, and I just really appreciate that. I always wonder about dads of young children meeting parents of older children, who are farther along, like Raymond and I. So I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit more about that. Is that something you actually sought out, or is it something, how that feels to you?
I think to a certain extent, I was looking to see what my future would hold. I think when you get news that, you know, your path that you think you're on is not the path that you thought you were going to be on. I mean, everybody's hoping for a healthy baby, right? And when you're told, you know, that something's going to be different, it can be really rattling. And so my wife and I both kind of pursued it in different ways, but a lot of it was trying to dig in, do the homework, figure out, you know, well, what's it going to be like a year from now? What's it going to be like 2 years from now? What do we need to do? What do we, you know, and our approach to a lot of these things is, well, let's try to fix everything we can fix, you know, and let's strategize and let's plan. So I don't know that I necessarily went looking for a group of dads per se. I know that my wife and I both were independently looking for resources that would help us on our path. We were initially connected with Warmline, and a I'm not sure what the right term is, but basically like a mentor.
Right.
And it was April Davila, which I'm sure some of you know. She worked for Warmline for a while. She has also has a, I think Dante's 11-year-old son with Down syndrome. So she was there for us and reaching out and like, it's going to be okay. And there for us as our initial safety net as we left the hospital. Ironically, she kept reaching out to us and we're like, we're on our way to another doctor's appointment. We don't have time to talk. We don't have time. And it was actually a couple months in before we actually had the opportunity to dig into that. I mean, it's all so overwhelming initially, right? Absolutely. And so I think that's part of the reason why I didn't initially get connected to the Dad-vocate group and didn't even know about it until my wife discovered it. So I think it was accidental, really. It wasn't, but it was accidental in looking for other parents to connect to and try to find the tools to give our son the greatest opportunities possible, just like with our neurotypical son.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you don't, in your situation, you don't feel intimidated by the future so much as wanting to know, you know, how you can better go into the future better prepared, or just with a little more awareness.
I think if you talked to me 6 months ago or 6 months prior to that, or 6 months prior to that, it has been very dynamic. And the emotional roller coaster that I've been on, you know, my family's been on, whatever, it's changed. I feel a little more empowered now, and I think maybe some of it is that Matthew is making some leaps right now, that just feel like, oh, he's progressing. Yeah, he's delayed, but he's progressing. He's, you know, crawling in his own way. He's standing up. He's trying to walk. He's and those things feel like a little more normal, just drawn out. I mean, and again, that's probably different for everybody, you know, depending on what your challenges are, right? But I don't know, I feel a little more empowered at the moment than I did, because I felt really, I think before finding the Dad-vocate group, just really in a funk, and really stuck or challenged, or I don't know. There's a whole lot of words that probably, but I feel less that way now.
Yeah.
You know, one thing with David too, I remember, sorry about this, Sal.
No,
I remember when David first came to the group, he came to a pretty intense meeting. And like David said, you know, most of the kids were teenagers and young adults. And trying to chat with David, you know, side conversations and letting them know that a lot of us have the experience, and we remember back when our kids were at that age, and just letting him know that he has a great opportunity to listen and learn from us older dads. And it's a situation I wish I would have been able to experience way back 25 plus years ago, when I went to my first Dad-vocates meeting too, that we were all kind of going through this journey at the same time. There wasn't a dad with a kid that was 10 years old even at the time. So we could see a future. And that's one of the nice things, and one of the difficult things too, with trying to moderate a group like Dad-vocates, where we want the entire age range of dads participating, because there's so much to learn. There's so much for me to learn from dads with kids that are older than my son, that are thoroughly entrenched in the adult world and stuff. So that's the sharing. That's what we can, give David a little bit more of a roadmap that Al and I did not have back, 25 years ago. So thanks, David. I appreciate you coming along the journey.
Thank you very much, and I do sincerely appreciate that roadmap that you and other dads have been able to provide me, Raymond. I only have a few more minutes that I can stay on the call. I need to get on another call for work. Are there any additional questions for me before I get off at 10:30?
Robin, did you have a question? Go ahead.
No, not really. When you first came out the hospital, you connected with Wormline, and then they started to try to work with you, or you were just going to the doctor so much that you didn't get a chance to work with anybody?
We really didn't get a chance to connect with anyone aside from on the phone back then. I feel like it was pre-COVID training almost. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, but it really was. This whole stay at home, shelter in place, it feels actually like we've done this before, with the exception of, it's maybe a little bit more isolating, but when my son, when we had the diagnosis of the heart defect, we knew he was going to need heart surgery within 3 to 6 months. And so we knew we couldn't get him sick. And we delayed my older son in going into preschool because we couldn't be bringing home germs. And so we just isolated at home for 3 months until we could get him in for heart surgery. And so really the only connection we had was through April, which at the time she was with Wormline, and like I said, had a son that was 11. And so she was our initial roadmap and our initial connection to other parents and other families who had gone down this path before.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David, I know you have to jump off in a minute for your other meeting. One question that I would have for Raymond, Al, or David is what can we do? What can the regional center do? What can service coordinators do to support fathers in these situations? And maybe it's more early intervention, 0 to 3 time period. But I know as a service coordinator, I tried to have IPPs in the evening if that's what worked best for the father, at their house if that's what worked best, at 5 o'clock, whatever worked best, because it was so many families on my caseload were single moms, and it was so challenging for them and their family situation, and obviously for the child as well. And the families where the father was kept involved, came to the meetings, got informed about the disability system and services. It's always challenging, but it was always a little better when the fathers were included and they could come to the meetings, they knew what was going on, and everything wasn't just turned over to the mother to be responsible for, and the dad got kind of left out of that, didn't understand the system, didn't understand maybe didn't go to any of the trainings, because a lot of them were offered at times that might not work for the dad. So I just wonder if there are suggestions or tips for how can we, from an early time, really keep dads involved and also just support the health of the whole family, despite challenging situations.
Sure. David, do you want to try to jump in real quick and give your perspective?
I mean, I think, sure. I think flexibility in timing certainly helps. I don't. I mean, I think those of us who have dual parent families are at a distinct advantage. I hear what you're saying, Sonia, about having mom and dad there is beneficial. I don't know. I guess the flexibility, the evening type thing, with a normal work week would be beneficial. But I'm going to have to check out. I apologize. I really would like to stay on this call more than my other call.
Totally understand. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
So much,
Thank
David.
you, everyone.
Yeah,
Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet
You're welcome.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great
Good
day.
luck.
You too.
Hey, I would jump in a little bit on that.
Sure.
From my own historical perspective, Warmline Family Resource Center actually had moved from the Bay Area. And before moving here to Sacramento, I was involved with the Early Start program in San Mateo. And they had asked me to kind of bring some dads together, and we went to a couple of Giants games. But my wife was from Sacramento, so we really needed to move closer to her family. And I called Warmline ahead of time, knowing about Early Start FRCs. And I met Terry Ferguson, who worked there, and she gave me a lot of information. So when I moved here, ultimately I applied for a job with Warmline, and I wasn't hired, but they called me and asked me if I wanted to start a dad's group. And I really, frankly, did not want to start a dad's group. Like many dads, I was really not into, my idea of a dad's group was going to the Giants game at it was Candlestick Park back then. But I knew that well, number one, I needed to work, and I felt like when you volunteer, that's kind of a road to get into an organization. And so originally, the Trailblazers, which I was asked to begin, I started as a volunteer, and then very soon I actually became a member of the Warmline staff. And then that Fathers Group was part of the Warmline, list of services or whatever, and especially focused on Early Start. And for many might not know that in Early Start, there's a lot of funding, but it is focused on birth to 3. And finding dads and parents who want to do that sometimes can be difficult. But we did start that group, and I'm really happy to hear that now 20 years later, there's that Warmline is still funneling, or that the dad's group is still, Dad-vocates is still something that someone at Warmline would tell a dad about. And I was also going to mention that for all the years I worked at Warmline, I couldn't tell you how many times I had a mom, because mostly moms called, and if I happened to be the one they talked to, because I'm a man, it would come around to questions like, gee, how can I get my husband to do this? Or tell me how I can get my husband to do this. Kind of like this little, gee, I've got a guy on the phone, I'm going to ask him some questions about how I can, better relate to my husband or help him, or lots of different points of views. And so David's story about his mom getting him, his wife getting him to the dad's group is not unusual. In fact, I actually met Raymond at my wife's high school reunion. Was the first time I met you, Raymond. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Because Denise went to the same high school as Cherie did. So there was that connection that we kind of leaned on in the beginning.
I think, go ahead.
I think too, Sonia, it's because as Al and I both know, because I worked at Warmline too for a number of years, it's the mama bear. Mama bear is doing all the research. Mama bear is doing all the caring of the child. Mama bear's, taking child to the appointments and therapies and things like that. And dad is trying to earn a living, trying to keep a roof over everybody's head, and trying to keep the family unit together as best as possible. So dad is consumed about work, keeping the house, doing the yards, keeping the cars running. So mama bear can take the child to therapies. So it's a difficult way to get dads, but it's important that service coordinators, Warmline, and all professionals know that there is that resource out there for dads to participate in, whatever that may look like. And as Al and I both tell dads, hey, come when you can. Don't feel obligated that you have to come on a monthly basis. We'll be here on a monthly basis, but hey, drop in when you can. I have a couple of dads that show up only when we meet on the last Tuesday of the month, when it happens to be the 5th Tuesday of the month, because they're committed to other things on the 4th Tuesday of the month. So that's great. I see them twice a year, which is perfect, and they get the information that they need to continue on. So it's just a matter of letting people know that this resource is available. And to Al and my credit, yes, we are dads. We're first and foremost dads of kids with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But we have done extensive training. We've worked at different locations. We've been to conferences. Al and I both are known in Sacramento. We're both known throughout the state of California. I have my contacts throughout the nation and stuff. So, we're just not a couple of dads trying to figure this out. Yes, we started off being that dad, trying to figure out what that roadmap even looks like for ourselves and stuff. And as I tell people all the time, I'm figuring this out myself. There has been no roadmap specifically. I'm trying and doing the best I can with the information I have at that moment in time.
Yeah, I wanted to welcome just William and Kadada and Ken. Feel free to come off a video if you want. We make no judgments about yoga pants if you're wearing them or whatever, but if that doesn't work for you, that's fine too, but you're welcome to be part of the discussion. Or just come off mute and participate if you have any questions. It's 10:37, so any questions are welcome. So please feel free to be part of the discussion. So go ahead, Al or Raymond.
Yeah,
I was gonna
go ahead.
interrupt for 1 second. Yeah. There's a question in the chat, and the question is, when does the Dad-vocates group meet and where?
Okay, we meet on the last Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
7:30 at the Round Table Pizza on the corner of Hazel and Madison. That's what happened before COVID. So right now I haven't been doing Zoom only because it's a little difficult, and I want dads to feel safe doing it and being in a private location. I know Al's in his studio right now, as he said earlier, for ultimate privacy, because, as Al and I both know as dads of kids, even the bathroom is not private with a kid with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So, we'd have to do it, sitting in our car in the driveway would be, one of the most private places to do it, and that's not really workable.
Just to clarify, you guys are at Madison and Hazel?
Yes, the Round Table Pizza.
But not meeting right now.
But not meeting right
now. No,
now.
I know. And then you're on hold because of COVID. Okay. Thanks, you guys.
You're welcome.
I wanted to just talk a little bit about the wide range of dads and the situations that have come to Trailblazers and then Dad-vocates, it's really, in case there's somebody listening wondering if their situation, if they're going to be comfortable or not. Going back through the years, we know families whose mom and dad, husband and wife are still together, but we also have those, every hard situation you can think about almost has come to a dad's group meeting. And we're talking about parents who ultimately separate and go different ways. There's a lot of emphasis on single moms, and yet I think Raymond and I will always want to mention some of those dads that come, and they're the key, they're the primary caregivers of their children because for whatever reason, mom is no longer there. And I will give you that it's probably more common for moms, but the idea of dads being primary caregivers, it's not 1 in a million. It's more common than we would think. And I think like every couple who gets married and starts a family, or maybe he's not married, because we certainly have those situations where people are not married and the child is something that just happened and they're still trying to work out their relationship while they're caring for their child. And Raymond and I have both been at more memorial services and funerals than we would want to remember, and that is part of the common ground that we walk on in our roles as parents. And so I just mention that because anyone that comes to Dad-vocates or that connects with the Council on Developmental Disabilities, I want to just express that so that there's comfort, that wherever you're coming from, if you're coming to be listened to or to share something, you're welcome. And you're just part of the human condition that we all share. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Al. Yeah.
What would you, both of you all, tell a new dad that had just found out that their child has disabilities?
I think for me, stay involved, get involved, be a partner to mom, listen, take notes, ask questions, and just be present is the main key to this whole thing that we go through. And making sure that your voice is listened to during appointments, making sure that you're asking the doctors and the professionals those questions too, because dads have the questions and dads need to step up and ask the questions. We know mom's always going to ask the questions for the most part, but dads have got to ask those questions too. And there are no stupid questions. All questions have to be asked because somebody has asked that question before and stuff. So whether it be if you're trying to look down the road, if you're looking, for some of our dads, will my child even survive the night? Our cases too. So be present, ask questions. Al, do you want to add to that?
Well, I think you definitely nailed many of the things that we talk about. And I know that you also mentioned that we listen because every person comes, with who they are, where they are at the moment, and with whatever tools they might have to use at the time. And so I know Raymond and he mentioned we've been through a lot of trainings. And I think the most important ones begin with listening. So before you answer a question, you have a better understanding of where that person is coming from. And, you know, just like women, men are, you know, we come from all different walks of life. And I think one of the things that I really have valued over the years is seeing fathers that we have come in contact with who have then gone on to do their own thing, to find their own way, to make their own contribution based on who they are and what they need and want to learn. I can think of, oh gosh, there's a big beer fest in Sacramento every year that Randy Severs was a dad who was with the Trailblazers early on a little bit, and he started facilitating a group in Elk Grove, and then he went on his own, and he's done so many great things in the community, and I think that's something that we always look for, because you know we all just start right here, and it's how we all reach out. I think Sonia and Kathy, you probably see that too when you're trying to cover 10 counties with 2 people. I mean, that's something we experience at the Warm Line, and so did Raymond and I with dads, because we've had calls from all over the state, and as Raymond said, even from beyond California. So those are some of the things I think about as well.
Thank you.
I hope that helps your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
The thing is, really, it's got to be who you are. You know, we see how different the world is right now. We're, you know, this COVID thing and all the things that are going on in the streets, and we're really identifying our differences while we're also trying to come together, you know, with our commonalities. And so that's kind of what you do with a dad's group, or with a mom's group, or any kind of group. You know, some of the dads come, and the next time we would see them would be at a training on how to feed your child, because that was the specific area their child needed help or, you know, support in. Or it might be at a, you know, a training on, you know, what do you call it? You're trying to save, come on now. You know, resuscitation training or whatever.
CPR.
Yeah, CPR. Thank you so much. California Public Radio training. No. But you know, or it's just somebody you see bowling. Right now, my daughter is 29, and you know, I'm a huge advocate still for Early Start, because it had such a great influence on my family. For us, it really saved our lives, the Early Start program, because my wife and I had very different experiences with our daughter Molly when she was born, and just our approach to it, because we came from totally different backgrounds. And so those are the types of things that you run into, and I always encourage people to find their own way in their own relationship also.
Thank you, Al. I'm going to try to launch a poll right now, and then we'll continue talking after that. So bear with me. Okay. So I've launched a poll. I don't know if you can see both questions or just one.
Oh,
You can see both.
Oh, okay. Can you go ahead and answer them? I presume you have. Do you have a way to answer them?
No, it doesn't let us.
Well, click
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes
Oh,
or
yeah,
no.
it does.
I can.
Okay.
You-
All right.
You
Yeah.
put your finger on the answer that you choose.
There you go.
Right.
All right. Try to answer both questions, and then we'll end it in a minute. All
I
right.
do want to say hi to Lisa, because I've seen Lisa many times through the years at different community gatherings, including at the Mind Institute. And so I just wanted to say hi, Lisa. It's nice to see you.
Hi. How's your family?
We're doing pretty good. We have been home since March 8th, and we're still holding strong here.
Okay. Are you seeing the results now? Because I don't know.
Uh-huh.
what
I-
Yeah,
Yes.
we are.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very exciting. 3 people answered. Very good.
Trying to answer. I'm not sure if I did.
I think it's, well, let me see if I click relaunch. Oh, it's going to clear it.
Yeah.
Can't do that. It'll clear the answers. That's okay. Let me just take a quick screenshot and then
Well,
we'll
I'll
go.
give you two. I'll give you 2 yeses.
Yeah,
Does that
I'm
count?
wondering, can co-hosts vote?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm going to relaunch this. We got to get more votes here. There's 9 of
Yeah,
us.
we need more votes.
It's 9 of us. We can do this. Okay, I'm going to relaunch the polling. Let's see. Okay, we got to start over. Everybody's got to vote here. This is our practice. So everyone can vote. I don't think I can vote, but everybody else should be able
It doesn't let me
Oh,
vote either.
you know why? Because 3 of you are co-hosts.
That's what
Okay.
I was thinking.
All right.
Ah,
Oh, but we got up to 4 this time.
Woohoo!
Hey,
we're still missing one.
we could
I
do thumbs
know.
up. We could do thumbs up.
We can do a thumbs up for sure. Okay, thumbs up if you agree that you learned. Okay, hold your thumb up for a second. This is our really fancy polling system. Okay,
It works.
I got it. All right, thank you.
With Robin's question, I want to add something to get moms and dads involved, going to meetings. It's critically important that both moms and dads, and this took me a long time for me to understand this, probably years, but moms and dads will hear the exact same information and process it completely differently. So neither one's right, neither one's wrong. They heard it through their own lens, and there will be instances where, with moms and dads, a doctor or professional will say something negative about the child, then one of you will start fixating on that answer and not hear the next 3 sentences and comments that a professional makes. And that's just part of human nature. And for me, it took me years and years to figure that out, because I'm a guy and we're dense. I'm dense. So that's just the way it is. And that's one of the things that I can work with the younger dads like David and talk with other dads about. Hey, when you're at meetings, understand that you and mom will both hear the exact same things differently, and that's okay, because you're at 2 different points in time. It depends upon your lenses. So that's just something to be aware of when we get more and more dads involved in our lives of our kids.
Good.
William or Ken, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask? Or Kadada? Hi there, thanks for joining us.
Hi, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. And I'm glad that Al brought this up when he talked about single dads, because I do think that is an underserved community of people who may or may not know how many resources there are out there. And that's why I wanted the information for the meetings. I know that you guys are not holding meetings now, but once you do get up and running, even if you have a contact number or an email address for me to pass that information along, so that they can reach out, and just make that connection, so that when you do resume, your normal meeting schedule, they'll be included in that.
Sure.
There's a lot of, like single moms, everyone always talks about single moms, and single moms get, a lot, and I'm one of them. So I do advocate for single moms, more specifically solo moms, because they're solo moms or solo parents that don't even have a grandmother or mother or sister or family member that they can count on, and no one really takes that into consideration, so I'm always the one saying, hello, childcare is always an issue, respite is always an issue. There are things that are issues that if one thing falls out of place, it's traumatic. I find myself, and I consider myself a very strong person, but during COVID-19, where everything's so unpredictable, I've had several meltdowns myself when things don't go smoothly, because it's not as easy as, oh, well, wait till someone gets home and then you can pick this up later, or there is no later. It's like there's nothing else. There's no other options. So that is something that's near and dear to me, to my heart. And I do understand. That's why I kind of talk about solo parents, because I do recognize that there are a lot of solo dads as well, that are trying to raise children, and more even harder to do with special needs children.
And thank you for talking about grandparents too, because that's one. I mean, that is so huge. Grandparents are so huge in many ways, in many families. It's the grandparents, and so that's really good. And also mentioning about COVID, and I like the term solo also. Thank you. Maybe that's a musician in me, but
I speak a lot for crisis nursery, so I do a lot of
okay.
and a lot of times, well, they really liked it because when we sat down and I had a one-on-one, and unfortunately there are a lot of single parents who abuse the term, and not really that they're abusing it, they don't understand fully.
Mhm.
And so everyone else don't understand. So a single parent, a single mom, or a single dad could have the support of their brothers, their siblings, or their parents, or a whole house full of people, but they consider themselves single because they're not in a relationship with the child's mother or father, right?
Mhm.
So it's still not the same as someone who has no support, because
Yeah.
you can leave the child at home with your parents or your
Mhm.
siblings, and say, oh, I'll be right back. You can get a break. You can get respite, with family members. You can use your family members as your respite care provider. And solo parents don't have that option. So,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't take into consideration that you may have lost all of your family
Yeah.
in a airplane crash.
And even for me, I will share that I worked in the community for many, many years, and I spent a lot of time going all around, and I love it. But when when my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, passed away, I was no longer able to do that anymore because she had been so important in
Yes.
helping to care for my daughter at home while I was out doing the work in the community. And that essentially changed my whole balance of my life. And so I stay home now. And I that is a big deal when you lose the support of extended family uh, in lots of different ways. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Let me tag on that too, Al. One of the things with the dads group, we've started out of necessity, basically, having the dads bring their kids with them because they are solo and they still need that support. And as much as we've never wanted that in the past because we want dads to be free and open and stuff like that. We've recognized the fact that some of our dads, to get that support, we need to say, okay, yeah, your child can come, but just be aware that conversations may not be appropriate for them, and being able to isolate them a little bit in the meeting area a little bit and stuff. But I recognize the fact that that's important because we do have a lot of our dads are now solo and stuff, but we still want them to be a part of this group, get training they need, and the supports that they need. And I will also mention one other thing is, especially since you both brought up parents and grandparents, for some of us now, we're part of that sandwich generations. So we've always been caring for our kids, but now we're having to start to care for our parents. And that becomes a another stressor on our lives, and how we all negotiate that is critically important, because I have a couple of dads that are going through that issue right now. So I am looking forward in my life, because they're giving me a roadmap on how to possibly start dealing more with my mother, who's 85 and still in pretty good health, but there's things that my brother and I still need to do from her, an hour and a half away. So there's that's coming back to us as kids ourselves, having to care for mom and dad, and also having to care for our young adult children with disabilities. So that's a completely different conversation that the dad's group is having those conversations about. How do you take mom's keys away from her?
Mm-hmm.
Those are important questions.
Yeah, great point about multiple generations.
Hi, this is William Reed.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi,
I just
William.
like to thank you guys for the work you do. It's a very important group. My son was diagnosed with autism about 42 years ago. And at that time, there was very little, if any, support, nor support groups. And we have gone, really around the world looking for support and help to understand autism. And when we mention autism, people want to know what medium does he work, as opposed to how it related to his disability. And we started several groups throughout the country. Sometimes they got momentum. We got larger groups. Most of the time, it was a very small group. 40 years ago, people with disabilities normally were not out in the public.
No.
People sheltered them, so you couldn't really find them. Really, when we lived in Danville, we had to go all the way to Berkeley to find a support group. When we first moved to Loomis in the Sacramento area, we had to go all the way down to Elk Grove, to put together things. So I thank you guys for what you do. I'll let you know, I want to tell you, the job never ends. No. We fought for preschool, we fought for, nursery schools, we fought for elementary schools, and it's been a fight continuously. And as your son gets older, there are fewer and fewer programs and support for them. So as you very well know. So thank you for what you do. I really support you guys. I'd like to hear more about your group, because it's a well-needed program and well-needed to have that support around you.
Thanks, William. Appreciate that. And, truly you are a trailblazers, because you were leading the way for Al and I, since your son is, 10 years plus older than our kids. So, we thank you, because you were that forerunner to us and stuff. So we our hats off to you, and we appreciate everything that you have done to allow us to do what we're doing today.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Sonia, I appreciate you very much for asking me to be a part of this group, to give us a few minutes to give kind of the dad's perspective on this journey. We greatly appreciate the platform that you've given us today to at least have a conversation. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion, and Al, for joining us. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to be seen. Thank you.
Yeah, and everyone for joining and talking about super important issue, and one that this is just the beginning of a discussion really about these issues, and the whole issue of the sandwich generation and taking care of our parents, and that's just a whole nother topic that's really important, and I know affecting many of those on this call right now. So thank you again. I want to respect your time and end the call so we can get on to our next appointments. But thank you again for everything you do, we'll continue to share the word when you have your first meeting in person, or if you decide to go on Zoom at some point to check in with the parents, let us know, and I'm always happy to spread the word. It's something I think close to many of our hearts, of having as much family support as you can, or community support. Doesn't even matter if it's just family, but community support and neighbors and everyone involved, because it can't be just us, right, Kadada? We need support, we need friends, and
We need a village.
a village, that's right.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's great to see how much we've gone through and gotten to. So over the years, I'm a retired nurse, and I used to, even though I worked in a hospital, I would occasionally have my clients that were disabled, and it would give their parents, when I came in, it would give their parents a chance to go out. So it's really great to see the dads coming in and having a place where they can go and express themselves, find out. Because like you said, men listen differently than women do. So it really does make a difference to have a place where dads can go.
All right. Well, thank you. So thanks for Robin for being part of the conversation, and Ken and Kadada and Lisa and Kathy and Raymond and Al, and everyone stay safe and have a good day, and watch out. It's hot out there. So thank you again, and we'll all be in touch. Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you, William. Bye-bye now.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.